Welcome to Supply Chain Optimizers, a podcast about supply chain efficiency and optimizations in the real world. Today, I chatted with Mike Venditti. Mike is the VP of Supply Chain at SEKO Logistics, where we talked about a very often overlooked source of efficiency and optimization in your supply chain, your employees. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mike Venditti. The first question is, we did notice Mike or Michael, by the way.
It depends if I'm in trouble at the house. It's normally Mike, but if I tend not to hang up something or put something where it should be, it can be Michael really quick.
All right. Mike, it is then. I did notice that you did business administration, right? A little bit of marketing there in high school. How did you end up in the supply chain world?
I'm sorry?
How did you end up in the supply chain world, right?
Well, yeah, it's funny. When I first got out of college, I was working in of all things, a grants administration office with the Department of Education, doing more number crunching and things of that nature. And the office closed, and it was right around the time my late son had been born, and so timing being what it was, I was like, well, I get to be kind of a stay-at-home dad for a period of time, but that wears on you after a while, and
Right.
so the job market. This was the early '90s, and I was at some point I had to get back to work. So my brother-in-law was working for a grocery distribution center at the time. And he said, "Hey, we're hiring, and I didn't know anything about warehousing." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Think of it as a paid workout. You get to pick orders and do whatever." And so I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I applied and got hired. And to be honest with you, it wasn't. I had no illusions of ever staying in this industry, none. At the time I was working, I had actually gotten my real estate license, and I was doing pretty well on that side of the fence. And I said, well, this will be kind of a good holdover. At least I keep some income coming in and while I'm doing this. And then, like anything, opportunities arise. You start to put yourself into positions you never thought would materialize. And lo and behold, 30 years later, I still sit in the supply chain industry.
Yeah, like the long way to like VP of supply chain, right?
Yeah, it's been a good run. There's days where like any role that you fill, I always think back to what my mom said, and I said, well, maybe if I had studied more, I could have been an attorney or something. But but here I am in the supply chain world, and I love it. I actually really enjoy it.
So you've mentioned, wow, 30 years on it, right? What's
Yeah.
So there's two questions there, right? In such a long career in the space, what are the biggest changes that you've seen, and what's exciting for you about the future of this industry?
Well, it's funny, and it's very odd because when I started in the grocery industry, we had literally, and I think back to the day, it was, you had full-blown engineered standards. I mean, they knew how long it should take you, XYZ coordinates, how long it should take you to pick an order, do this, do that.
Right.
Obviously it was it wasn't a revenue generator, right? Everything you did on that side of the fence was as a percent of revenue for the grocery industry, and the margins are small, so they had to measure it. What I've seen over the last, and again, having been in the grocery side, temperature control, 3PL, Amazon, the Riders, the DSVs, and now SEKO, is I've seen some things. The biggest challenge I still see in the entire supply chain is I use the phrase we're data rich and information poor. And what I mean by that is, we have pockets of data all over the place, whether it's on the client side of the fence, whether it's here on our side of the fence, but getting your arms around it all so you can make educated, data-driven decisions about how to really be as efficient as possible within the supply chain and drive cost out of it is the one piece I still see some 3PL struggling with. And that, and candidly, the price of automation has gotten better, right? On the 3PL side of the fence, one of the biggest barriers to entry to automate your supply chain or your warehousing side was short-term relationships with clients. It's very hard to get the ROI you want on some of the automation when it's very short-term contracts and things of that nature.
Right.
So how do you automate but still be able to do it in a way that whether it's client A, B, or C, you can still drop them into the infrastructure you built, and where it's not just client specific, but it's more a leg within the 3PL stool, if you will, whether it's B2B or direct to consumer or whatever. So, and seeing the price of some of those things really start to come down now, it's becoming more cost efficient. And then, Diego, to your point, we haven't even scratched the surface on what AI can do, right? And I think our industry is in the 3PL world. I'll say this kindly: we're not early adopters. I'll leave it at that. We tend to let other people tend to work the kinks out before we want to dip our toe in the water, right?
Right. And well, it's yeah, because it does play into these differentiation aspects, right? And at SEKO, you very clearly, I kind of like that tagline at SEKO's webpage and LinkedIn page, right? Small enough to care, big enough to scale, right? It's very
Yes.
aspirational, right?
Yep.
Talks about like very humane and like direct touch with customers, right? So
Yeah.
3PLs famously a lot of competition, right? To say it mildly, right? To put it mildly, a lot of competition. How do you
Yeah.
differentiate, right? How does one differentiate in this space?
Well, it's funny, at the risk of, reliving the nightmares of the past, if you think back, right, just before the pandemic and a period before all the buzzwords were just in time inventory, right? Everything was
Right.
just in time, right? And then March of 20 came, everything gets shut down. That first year, government's pumping money into the economy like nobody's business. People are home, they're spending money like nobody's business. So what happened, right, in our business, in the 3PL world? I mean, it was a vicious cycle. So what happens? People were buying, customers got caught short. I mean, 2020 out of stocks were the norm. Shelves were empty because
Yeah.
and so 21 comes and 22 comes, and just in time became a mindset of just in case. So customers said, well, when in doubt, cut an order with China, India, wherever you're having your goods made, and get the goods here. Well, that created this vicious cycle in the 3PL world, because what ended up happening is inventory started flowing into the US like nobody's business, and the commercial real estate took full advantage of that, right? Buildings in, I'll just use SoCal as an example, that were leasing for 90 cents a square foot were all of a sudden going for $1.80 a square foot. And people needed the space. And so fast forward, you come to early 23, and as I like to say, I think clients woke up, it was like waking up on New Year's Day with a massive hangover and saying, what have I done? I've got inventory to last me the next 10 years. It's great that I'm making my top line number, but it's all going out the bottom line because I'm spending an inordinate amount of money in inventory carrying costs. So what we've seen, unfortunately, happen in at least our industry, in the 3PL world, is a lot of 3PLs have been getting hurt because they had to sign massively expensive and in many cases long-term deals when the market was at its peak. I don't think I don't think we've even hit rock bottom yet, candidly.
Okay.
And what we've done, at least in SEKO's world, is you can't go to a client when the market's now down to, say, $1 a square foot and you're carrying $1.80. So we've been really good with our executive VP, Brian Baskin, and others to look for ways to consolidate and shed some of that high cost real estate and make it more palatable, pardon the expression, for our clients. And 23, 24, and even in a little bit of 25, it's been a lot of rearranging the deck chairs, if you will. And so by doing so, we've been able to drive our costs down, at least on the, there's really the two biggest burdens, right? It's labor and it's the commercial real estate.
Right.
And we've really addressed the commercial real estate aspect. As 25, 26 now move forward, we'll start to see where the markets go. And then we can take a step back and say, do our locations now even make sense? We don't have this field of dreams concept that some 3PLs do, where if you build it, they will
They
come,
will come.
or if you lease it, they will come. We're pretty conservative in that regard. We'll go if the market dictates it and the client dictates it, but we're not just going to go pop a building up in Columbus with the intent of now we'll just try to sell D2C clients out of Columbus, even though it's a hotbed there. So we've been able to really adjust to the market and I think stay ahead of it, where some 3PLs are still struggling with some of that carrying cost. So I think we've done a good job in that regard.
Something that really stood out to me as I, looked at your LinkedIn posts, your story, Mike, is how much really you seem to enjoy recognizing your teammates at SEKO, right? I see your posts every month, right? Like employee of the month, and you do like a small but mighty kind of like celebration for those folks, right? And you do
Yeah.
things like 22 push-ups for veterans,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I don't know. As I was browsing your posts there on LinkedIn, it really made me happy, right? And
Yeah.
like, yeah, or inspired it, right? And in a way, we were thinking, this is a show about supply chain optimization. We were thinking that the optimization for today is having happy people, right? Having happy collaborators, happy employees. That less stress, happier leads to sources of efficiency. So, long-winded way to ask you about that, right?
Sure.
Why is this special to you? Why is this meaningful to you?
You know, it's to me, and I think Diego, you touched on it a little bit, right? I mean, the competition in the 3PL market is stiff, right? And everybody, and no knock on our business development friends, but the reality is everybody goes into a client and talks about their value proposition and their value differentiators, right? Well, look, let's really be honest here about this. Every 3PL has a building, they have rack, they have equipment, they have systems. There's nothing proprietary. Yeah, each one's a little different. Manhattan, Red Prairie, whatever you may use. Okay, fine. The racks, the equipment, it's all the same. So if you boil it down, really, what's the real value prop as a company in our industry? It has to be the folks. They're the ones that drive the engine. And if you don't create, I don't care what strategy you roll out, what grandiose plan you want. If you don't have a workforce that is engaged and committed, it will never be as successful regardless. And so to me, from a personal perspective, it just makes good business sense to invest in the folks that drive the bus every day. They're the ones, picking them up, putting them down, offloading, putting away. If you can teach them more than just the task, but having them understand why they do it, why it's important, how it adds value, and really tap into the creative thought process that these folks have. Because look, they may not understand Six Sigma or lean philosophy, but if you go out on the floor and you talk to a guy or gal doing a job and you ask them, what really stands in your way of being successful? And you can create an environment where they feel comfortable talking to you about those things. The amount of opportunity that you can just trip over in those conversations are immense. And to me, again, in our industry, I know people like to put it in their mission statement, we value our people, and that sounds all fine and good. But what do you do? What do you invest on a daily, weekly, monthly basis into those folks? So to me, long way of saying this is, to me, that is and always will be the value differentiator in our industry.
And speaking a little bit of this latter part of your answer, it has to do a little bit with rituals, right? Around how do you promote, recognize, and otherwise engage with these folks at the, let's call it at the forefront, right?
Yeah.
What rituals have you come up with that are especially meaningful to you and that you know that these folks value? If you can give us a few examples there.
Well, make sure, I'm sorry, just so I follow the question one more time. I'm sorry, Diego.
No, no worries. It's really about the rituals that you've created to recognize and to empower these folks, right? Things like employee of
Well,
the month, right? Like what other things are out there that you have seen work
well, I'll
to?
be honest with you. So one of the things, besides the obvious recognition, because that's kind of like the bow on the package, to me, it's about, you know, this, not that I worked with them, I'm not that old, but, our dear friend Henry Ford used to say, why do I have to pay for the whole person when I just want their hands? Well, the reality is I want the whole person, right?
Right.
I want the whole person there. And we're competitive, right? We're a competitive industry,
For
we
sure.
get that. But if an associate knows and sees that not only are they just a badge number or a fingerprint when they come to work, but hey, leadership works with me. I have an opportunity to shape how our work is done on a daily basis and how to become more efficient and reward these folks for their contributions. Getting that involvement, and when folks see that their opinions matter and they have an active role in shaping what we do on a daily basis, somebody may offer them 50 cents more to go across the street, but then they say to themselves, yeah, but am I going to be able to leave an imprint here? Like, because I really believe people do want more than just a paycheck when they come to work. Yes, they have to take care of their family and whatnot. That's a given. But assuming we're competitive in that area, I think people want more than that, right? People leave roles, right? Any survey you look at, compensation's usually fourth or fifth down the line. It's never at the top of the list.
Right.
So it seems to me when you tap into that talent pool that you have in the building, you get amazing input from folks on how to be more efficient on a daily basis. As I tell my team, just ask good questions and stop talking. Just what do they say? The good Lord gave you two ears and one mouth because, frankly, He wants you to listen twice as much as you talk.
Love it.
And I think there's a lot of merit to that.
You also have a bunch of pictures with Archie, right?
Yeah, Archie's
Chief Morale
our
Officer.
yeah, he is the chief morale officer. Yes, ironically, when I go visit the buildings, the response is usually something like this:
Okay.
Archie, how are you? Oh, hi, Mike. The response I get is usually not as quite as exciting as the one that Archie gets. So, but I can live with that. He's tough competition.
It's tough competition, I bet, and it's kind of funny because one of my questions, a little bit tongue in cheek, right, was
Yeah.
what's the impact of Archie on SEKO's morale, right? But now you've answered it.
I got to tell you, it's so funny. People always will ask that. They'll ask me that, and I said, I can't quantify it, but when you see people smiling out on the floor, because he'll actually walk the warehouse with me. It's so funny, and he'll go up to people and you seeing people smile, pet them, and engage with them. Oh, can I get my picture taken with them or whatever it may be? If you ask me, place a dollar value on that, I couldn't tell you,
Impossible.
but inherently I know there's value in it.
Love it. And since we're in this topic, if you don't mind sharing one of your two favorite stories about people, right, in the building and the interactions you've had with them and how that has impacted morale at the company. You have one or two stories that stand out.
Well, I don't know about morale necessarily to tie it to morale, but what I can tell you is when people see this, I think there is a natural morale. So I'll share a story with you.
Please.
And I won't use the young lady's name, although she probably wouldn't mind. I was working actually at DSV at the time. And I was doing this massive renewal project within the building. And so a lot of painting and whatnot. And so this young lady comes in my office, and she looks like she's wearing this hazmat suit. I mean, she had painting outfit from head to toe. And I was, it was funny. Every time I walk by and see her on the floor, she was always busy, always, engaged, doing things. She was never just standing around. And so when she came in the office, we got talking about things. And in the back of my mind, I kept saying, wow, this lady really seems to have her act together. It just seems to be really sharp. So opportunity arose within the building to join our inventory team. So I had our inventory manager at the time say, hey, I got a young lady I'd like you to talk to. So he talked to her. She got her foot in the door there. Then we went into this major re-layout of the entire building. And it was a big undertaking. It was a 500,000 square foot building. And she ended up heading up the whole project, right?
Wow.
Long story short, I leave the company about 6-9 months later. I called her up and I said, hey, what are you doing right now? She told me she had actually left the company. And I said, I have a supervisory position. This was at Port Logistics, Ryder, Whiplash, right? I kind of use them interchangeably. I said, I have a supervisory position I'd like you to take a look at. And would you be interested? She goes, sure. So she came over, interviewed with the team. Phenomenal job. They hired her. Well, lo and behold, about a year or two later, I'm with another company. I call her up. I said, hey, I've got a 500,000 square foot building. I'd love you to take a look at it. I think you can run the whole building. And she paused. She goes, you think I can run the whole building? I go, yeah, no, I really do. I believe in you more probably than you do. I have more confidence in you than you do. She joined it, ran the company, did a phenomenal job. And now she's with me at SEKO. And running one of our critical accounts at SEKO. And I tell you that story to say, and it was funny. She sent me a note a year or two ago. I mean, she's still with us. But she said, Mike, I just want to thank you because the opportunities you've afforded me have allowed me to change really my entire family's lifestyle and open up a door that I never really thought would be there for me. And it's not and I reminded her, and I tell you the same thing, is I didn't do anything. I just opened a door. You took advantage of it, right? People can hold a door open for you, but if you don't do anything with it, so what? And and so I get more excitement out of those stories in the industry, and when you have a chance to work with folks like that and watch them grow in their career, than anything in this industry. Because clients change, product changes, companies may change, but those stories stay with you.
This is my second company that I've started, and what you just said resonates a lot because as a first-time founder, well, you do the things that you do, right? But one big change that I do notice in myself as a founder, right, as a technology founder, is how much I realize it's really about the team and fostering the talent and trying to bring up the team and really this act of togetherness of we're here, we're building, right? And let's foster a culture and a space where people can do their best work. So this resonates a lot with me. So thanks for sharing that.
No, it's it's funny, as you look back and you think of these stories where you've had a chance to hopefully positively impact somebody, not only their professional career, but as a result, their personal life. And as I said, there's nothing more exciting to me than that.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. Let's now change gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about technology. You kind of hinted at it on when we started the conversation. You did say logistics 3PLs are known to be a little bit outdated, right? Not necessarily first adopters.
Yep.
How do you change that? That's the first question. And B, do you have to change that even, right? Or are we here to, hey, this is just the name of the game and we'll just continue to be that way? What's your take on
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. Because I was actually having a conversation with others in our organization the other day about this very topic, and I think my perspective is sometimes people in our industry think technology is a panacea for all your ailments in the building. I'm a big believer in technology supporting, or whether we talk in robotics or whatever it may be, supporting what you've already put in as a good platform. So I've never been a tech. This is just me. I've never been a tech first person. I've been, let's exhaust the basics, the foundational stuff. Let's get the blocking and tackling right on a day-to-day basis. Let's do the things that are within our control and optimize it and push the envelope as far as we can go. Then and only then can we then say, okay, maybe we've plateaued, so to speak. Where can technology or robotics supplement that and take us to another level? But I think sometimes there's this, I've seen it happen over the years. I'll use labor management systems as a classic example. Oh, we got to get 15-20% out of our costs, so we're going to lay in a labor management system. Well, that's fine, but you have to understand, what are you measuring against? Are you measuring against current inefficiencies because of your optimization, your standardization of process, or your lack of engagement, again, back to that, about your people? So let's get that right first, and then layer in where it seems to make sense. I've had a chance to work with, especially now in the D2C sector. I guess, apparently the internet's not a fad, and it's going to be around here for a while. So,
I guess.
I keep thinking it's going to go away, but no, it's going to be around. And so we've seen this explosion in direct to consumer shopping, right? And for our industry, that usually means high SKU counts, a lot of things that you have to be able to maximize storage, but still have your process, your productivity along the way. I've used companies like Locus Robotics in the past. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, Diego, but I guess to
I'm not.
use a football term, American football, is it's kind of, picture the difference between playing man-to-man coverage or zone. So really what it does is the robots, or these little R2D2 things, come to a zone that you're working in. You fill whatever the machine stops at, and you pass it. So you may fill something where the order's called for it in your zone. You hit go, it goes over to Jose Luis's zone, and it works its way around versus me following it throughout the entire building. So I think in certain circumstances, depending on the client, the type of business they're doing, it makes a lot of sense. And the cost, the cost of entry is very good. But sometimes, again, on the other side of the coin, I've seen people want to go heavy on the tech side, and they haven't addressed some of the underlying issues that are currently going on in the business. And then they scratch their head and say, well, we expected this level of ROI, why aren't we getting it? Because the same issues you never tackled at the forefront are still there.
You did mention AI as one of the promising technologies of the future. Have you actually seen some impact of it? Have you run some projects using AI?
It's
Have you
funny.
seen,
I mean, from a
specifically?
personal perspective, I use it,
Right.
but within the supply chain, I don't think we've even tapped into it fully yet. Not even fully. I don't think we've scratched the surface yet on what it can and can't do. But, when I think about what little I know, and certainly, I'm a rookie compared to you, the reality is, as I said, you think about data that's being driven from the factory to the steamship lines to the drayage companies to the transportation companies to the buildings themselves to the end consumer. Each one of those, in each silo of those in and of themselves, is a wealth of information that I think something like an AI can bring together and really maximize the visibility, because that's always one of the biggest issues, right? Visibility, and then, candidly, the efficiency of each one of those segments.
Mike, couple of closing questions that I like to ask all of our guests. The first one being, tell us a little bit about your favorite efficiency project that you ever did in your career.
Ha! Well, this one's a good one. I'll never forget this one. So I joined a company many years ago, and when I first got there, and it was funny at the time, the president. He did a good job of not telling me the horror stories till I got there, which is probably good because maybe I wouldn't have gone. And on the surface, it sounded like I kept scratching my head saying, why are we struggling to this degree? And because I'd see numbers that we were supposed to achieve, but I'd see the actual, and you could drive an 18-wheeler through the gap. So one day, I talked to one of my building managers, and I said, "Hey, tomorrow, bring your sneaks, your shorts, your t-shirt." And he probably thought we were going to the gym or something. I said, No. I said, "We're gonna go pick some waters," right? So went out on the floor with him, and of course, the natural ribbing you get from the associates. Oh, look who's here. Do you know how to drive that pallet jack? All that good stuff.
Yeah.
And so we went out and literally we picked orders. And within the first 45 minutes, it became so apparent after talking to him and my own experience from watching this, because as I told you from the onset, when I first got into business, I was picking orders. So I've always appreciated that, right? And it became apparent all the things that were staring us in the face that were wrong. So we go back, we kind of whiteboarded everything of as is and said, what should it look like, right? The future state. Drew it all up with the folks that were, directly involved in the current setup. And we relayed out the entire building. Now, this is a building that had a pure loss of about $1 million the prior year. Pure loss. Not the budget. Pure loss.
Pure loss.
So did a bunch of relay out of the entire building. Got some of the pickers directly involved to say, hey, this is kind of version 1. We tweaked it a little bit, version 2. And we took that building with everybody's input and swung it from $1 million loss within 15 months to an $800,000 pure profit. Wow. Within about a 15-month period of time. And the client was so ecstatic because of the service levels that obviously went up as a result. They signed up for a new 3-year deal. But the thing that I'll always enjoy most about it is if you really want to see what's broken, you can't do it from behind your desk. Or you can't get it from a report. Yeah, that kind of may tell you where to look, but it doesn't, it's not the same as actually feeling it, touching it, and going and doing it, right? And I always tell, folks, the best way to relate to the guys and gals on the floor, try to do their job. So you can feel some of the frustrations they do. And that usually lights a fire under management to go, well, this is crazy. Why are we doing it this way? No, yeah, that's what, Sally or Johnny's been telling you for the last 8 months. But it took you to go out and do it to see it.
This is a great story. And maybe, if I may double click on it, was there one single action or a couple actions that you thought, well, this carried most of the shift to profit that you did on that efficiency?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, anybody that's been in this industry that does traditional case pick or any kind of
Mm-hmm.
order pick, you want to lay out, especially if it's at the case level, you have to lay it out in a way that makes it easy for the pickers to build good bases, interlock their cases easy so they don't have pallets that fall over when they get out of the pick line. And essentially, we went back from soup to nuts and said, look, why am I starting at this location? And then to find a box that is similar weight and volume and size, I have to go drive, 75 feet down the aisle, stop there, come back. I said, we don't get paid by the mile on these orders, right? So we have to design a method that works for the pickers out there. So, one of the biggest inefficiencies we do a lot of lean training with our team, so they know how to find waste and inefficiency. Well, motion is one of the biggest wastes. If I have to put a box down and then touch it and retouch it just to make sure that my pallets aren't going to fall over, that's a waste. Well, what's driving that? Go further back and figure out how to drive that out of the process. And that's one of the things, when we talk about, I'm not a big believer, like if we're spending money, say our labor costs are up. I'm very anti, well, just cut your labor. No. Learn how to identify waste, work on the process, the labor will take care of itself. If I simply cut labor for the sake of cutting labor and trying that approach, inevitably what happens is we spend more in overtime because we haven't changed any of our processes. We start failing the customer on their performance metrics, and it's usually a backwards way of going about it. So teaching folks, whether it's the operators, the leads, the supervisors, the managers, how to go out and do simple Gemba walks and learn to find waste in their operation is huge.
I interviewed Jack Levis from UPS a few weeks ago. Fascinating how he was running the innovation department at UPS, and he's responsible for Orion and a bunch of other optimizations, saving UPS literally $500 million plus per year, right? And this resonates and resembles a lot because he has some thoughts around, like, well, sometimes it's simple things, right? Like if you are a right-handed driver, have your pen in your left-hand pocket, right? So when you go and sign something, you save a few seconds when taking out your pen, right? And things like that do add up, right? Sometimes I'm fascinated how optimization's about adding up the small opportunities that you can find there. And speaking,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
please, please.
it's huge to your point. I mean, something as simple as, and you don't think about it because it's what you would think is so quick and not big time consuming, but repeat that step hundreds of times over the course of the day. People that are packing direct to consumer orders. Well, if every time they have to pick a scanner up to scan a UPC or a shipping label, and then have to put the scanner down, and that repetitive motion versus having a scanner stationary there where basically you just slide something over and they don't have to keep handling something.
Right.
Those motion wastes over time add up. They really do.
They really do. Speaking of efficiency, Mike, parting question. One simple change that operators can make to find efficiency opportunities in their supply chain.
Boy, that's a loaded question, Diego. You know, here, I don't know if there's one thing, but I will tell you the one thing that I think operators need to do, and I tell my team this all the time. You know that analogy about rocks in a jar and you pour the water in, and the whole displacement theory, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I ask my team this all the time. I ask them how many meetings do you have scheduled with clients during the week, and they all say, well, yeah, I got this many. How many meetings do you have maybe scheduled with your associates? Follow up coaching, whatever. Oh yeah, I got a lot of those. Okay. How many meetings do you have scheduled with yourself and your team just to look for improvement opportunities? Inevitably, I hear crickets the first time I ask the question. And my point back to the analogy is, if you want to make the time to find efficiency in your operation, you need to carve the time out to go look for it. You know, one of the exercises I give my team is, it's the old, one from the Japanese lean philosophy is, go stand in a circle for 30 minutes. Just take your waist form and go pick an area and just stand there and watch. Don't fix anything, just watch. Unless it's an egregious safety violation, then of course you fix it. But, if somebody's like climbing in a rack, no, go fix it. But one of the things we find in our business is we're so busy going from office to floor to office, that we walk past a myriad of opportunity on a daily basis. But I said, unless you slow down and commit the time to go look, almost universally, whether it was in prior lives, this life, almost everybody says, wow, I didn't see that. And the analogy I always give them to help illustrate is, I usually write something really simple on a piece of paper and I hold it about this far from their face. And I ask them to read it. And they say, I can't. And I said, why not? Well, it's too close. I said, that's my point. I said, you need to carve the time out to create the distance so you can watch.
That's a fascinating answer. Mike, thank you so much for chatting with me, chatting with us. And yeah, thank you very much. Really, really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate it. Very inspiring, right? And like renowned sense of purpose for me, that it really is about the teams and the relationships of the people that you work with and you build something with. So yeah, thank you very much for that reminder.
Well, I really appreciate it, and continued success. Sounds like it just continues to get better and better. So congratulations to you, Jose Luis, and everybody in your organization.
Thank you so much, Mike.